Welcome to Grace Pilled, where we explore the infinitude of God by talking about God, within God, aka interviews with people spanning the vastness of the spiritual path. My name is Hanna, and I will be your guide. I've been studying and practicing in a classical Shakta tantric tradition since 2015, and I just love exploring all of the ways that God wakes up within her own dream. For the last few years, I've been working professionally as a guide, doing one-on-one work, and also giving talks and courses. If you ever want to chat with me, you can book a call with me on my website or join my Patreon, which is my massive library of talks that I've given over the years. If you want to support the show, I now have a $5 tier on my Patreon that you can use as a tip jar for the podcast, and I really appreciate your support. Oh, and of course, like I said last week, before I move on, if you still have FOMO about our conflict course and wish you had joined, just DM me on Instagram. I can hook you up with the links that you need. You can listen to the recording from class yesterday, and you'll have just enough time to join us for our third session next week. But now, let's really get into it. Let's explore our guest, Aidan. Now, I just loved the way that Aidan described himself, and today we have Aidan Wachter, a self-described mongrel animist. I just love that phrase. And magical practitioner, he's a witch whose path has been shaped less by systems or strict philosophical frameworks and more by direct experience, dirt, string, and a willingness to listen deeply to the spirits that walk alongside him. In this conversation, Aidan shares how punk rock led him to magic and how a major breakdown clarified his role as a teacher and healer, even though those phrases kind of make him cringe, and why the tools that we already have at our disposal, all of us, you listener, the tools that you already have at your disposal might be more than enough for your spiritual path. And this part of the conversation, when we were talking about that, it jazzed me up. I was like, I am in good company right now. If you feel like you can't make progress in your spiritual or magical practice for literally any reason, please consider this interview your pep talk, because you may have more than enough at your disposal. You just need to do the thing, okay? We also talk about animism, autonomy, spiritual hoarding, ancestor complications, embodied spirit work, and the dangers of trying to fix spiritual problems with material logic. If you've ever felt allergic to orthodoxy, but feel deeply drawn to the unseen, you are going to love this conversation, and you may fall right into Aidan's Patreon and start learning directly from him. I felt that inspiration as well. I hope you enjoy this episode. All right, here we are, Aidan. Yeah, I'm so excited you're here.
I'm super stoked. When you reached out and said that Meredith suggested that we chat, I was like, I'm in.
Yes,
Whatever Meredith says, I'll do.
Oh, that's great. Yes. Thank you, Meredith. Speaking to her in the ether now. Thank you, Meredith. Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you're here. And just to kick off this conversation, I always like to ask people, like, is there any like big or small thing that you're proud of that's happening in your life right now, or a win that you've been experiencing?
I was thinking about that, and for me, it's a little bit of a weird one to try and answer, because the big win is like kind of continuing, which is that I had a pretty massive breakdown a couple of years ago, and I am fantastically on the other side of it, and that to me is kind of the everyday, like, woo!
I get that.
We took that bullet and removed it and healed from it. But on the shorter term, I've been asked to two different, one gathering and one conference, to talk, and said yes, which I have always turned down before. And to me, that's a big deal. So what that's going to look like, I have no idea. But
may I ask why you would turn it down in the past?
I'm not... We've talked about a little bit of this in the background, but I can't really ever tell what's going to come out when I do stuff with people, whether that's online or in person, because I'm so spirit-led. And then I also have kind of pretty extreme social anxiety. And so the idea of dropping into a kind of pagan magical conference space in a hotel, which this is all kind of the counter things to me, and attempting to do what I do in public is super freaky. I think it'll be fun. But there's also like a little bit of a terror aspect that in the past, kind of pre-breakdown, I always was like, no, I don't do that.
Got it.
And coming out of that, part of that was kind of accepting that I have a function that is really helpful for people within the various communities that I connect with. And that part of my job this time around is to actually lean really hard into that. And so saying yes, the conference was hilarious that it actually came the day after I stopped fighting the fact that my friend Leanne, who has a podcast called Be Mythical, she introduced me as a teacher, and I've never liked that term. Mm-hmm. And I was like, and then the next time we chatted, this is when this event kicked up, she introduced me as a teacher and a healer. And the healer part was like, okay, screw that for the moment, but that means I can totally probably accept the teacher part. And the next morning I got the invite to the conference when I checked my email. And I was like, well, I guess I have to say yes, because I said yes to the teaching. So we'll take it.
Yeah, it was like you opened a door of a potential identity, and then like an invitation came through.
Yeah, and it was probably said while I was having that thought the night before.
It's wild.
I haven't gone back and looked, but I would be unsurprised if that was sent the night before.
That's
but
wild.
I saw it in the morning.
Yeah, it sounds like you're saying that saying yes to the conference in part is also because you want to say yes to like serving your people and showing up in this role now.
Absolutely. That was the big shift. Is for me, I tried to back away from that. I tried to back away from my more public work for a bunch of reasons. And it was not, it's one of those, it was the correct decision, but it was not the correct decision. Like it was the correct decision because it was the impetus for a kind of massive breakdown and restructuring that got me to where I needed to be. But it was very clear, like the stuff that I work with was like, oh no, we have agreements.
Like you can't walk away.
You don't get to walk away and think you'll be okay. You can do it, but you won't be okay. And when I finally was like, I accept that. I did ask for that, and I love it. So I'll accept the guidance here, and let's do it.
Wow. Okay, so big win is getting over this hump of this dark night of the soul in so many words that you were experiencing. And maybe we can get to more of that later if that feels right for you. And then the little win is saying yes to the conference so you can step even more deeply into your role as a teacher and as a healer. Like these kind of sticky words for you.
Very sticky words.
Totally.
I find them questionable.
No, I'm with you. They're loaded. Both of those words are super loaded.
They're mega loaded.
Totally.
Especially, I think, if you know, I think if I'd picked that up when I was in my 20s, which I was actually teaching publicly about magic in my 20s, at that point, it was kind of meaningless. It wasn't weighted to me. I was generally dissatisfied with what I saw being taught in the specific zone I was in. And so it's like, okay, I don't know how to do this, but we're going to do it. But then later on, I had that experience that I think everybody has. It's the more that you know, the more you know you do not know. And you go, ooh, do I have any business talking? And then eventually getting to the place where, it's helping people. And
I'm with you.
That's the qualifier. It's not, can I sell books or can I sell a course? It's like, are these things actually being proven to be useful for enough people that I can just jettison all that stuff and go, okay, I have issues around these concepts. And I don't love the responsibility aspect of it. but I'll take it if it's useful.
Right. Did as you got older, like post 20s, did you feel like you deepened your understanding of what a teacher actually is and you started to like respect that word more? If that doesn't feel right, it's fine. I'm just wondering.
Not really. What I think happened was, when would it have been? It would have been maybe maybe 2000. I had a spirit event happen, that the spirit showed up and said, well, what it actually said was, "Get out of my house," uh, which I didn't really know was in its house. And I later think that I later on decided that I actually misunderstood that communication, but so it goes. So I'd stopped for about 10 years. I did now, as somebody who'd been practicing magic since they were a kid, I didn't stop practicing, but I stopped being public. I was very public. I was the guy in the neighborhood. Everybody knew that you could, like, there's a gnarly ass spirit in my closet. Can you get it out? And I would go get it out. And people would like approach me on the street that did not know anything about me, but could recognize kind of aspects of particular spirits in them, me, in me, or that could talk through me, and they would like address their spirits through me on the street.
You were like a walking billboard.
Well, apparently, yeah. And it was very funny. Like one of my friends, who I still have some connects with, all these years later, was with me when this happened. And it happened on the street, and she didn't say anything. And then it happened on the next bus we got on, which was not, that was more, that was way compressed. And when the gentleman that was kind of doing this contact through me, was done and got off the bus, she was like, "Does that happen a lot?" And I was like, "It kind of does." She's like, "What's that about?" "I don't know. It's just like I'm available. Like I was a telephone to particular things that you could pick up, and it was like the hotline. It was like the red phone in the movies, you know."
Did you become less available after the spirit event?
Absolutely.
Okay,
That
yeah,
does not happen.
Oh.
That does not happen anymore.
Oh.
And I'm not sure if I shut that down or if that was just kind of a phase. I was wide open, and hyper experimental at that point in time. So it may have been that was a kind of a side effect of that. Some folks that I know who've experienced things like that suggest that that's probably what that was. But I was definitely this wide open channel, and I kind of forgot that. And so I had this kind of 10-year period where I was away from all that stuff, and kind of outer magic and anything other than like, I need some money to get a truck kind of magic.
I see.
You know, and when it came back, or when I got back in pretty rapidly, I discovered that sometimes when I was talking to people, what I now call my peeps, which is what I call my spirit allies, they would show up and be like, "Can we answer this? Because you don't know shit." Uh, and I would be like, "Okay." And they would kind of unload this really profound shit. And
they'd give you information on how to best address a situation or talk to somebody.
no, they would like literally be like, "This, we'll just talk through you." Like, to the point where I had to go back and listen to, I still do this, like after this chat, if they come through, when it comes out, I will go back to listen to it because I won't have a clear memory of what it was.
I'm with you.
And so my experience of me with the peeps, is very much that we are a we situation. It's not me and them. We're getting more and more unified, more of the time. And especially it's like the way that it works for me is if I'm just walking around, nothing is going on. Like I tell people there's not a lot going on upstairs, and that's real. But if I sit down to talk to you, like this whole floodgate tends to open up. or when I sit down to write, this whole floodgate opens up. And so I've learned to really lean into that and kind of seek out places where that can happen, because it's incredibly beneficial for me as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I can relate with that a lot. I actually really relate with that a lot. I feel like if I'm just left to my own devices, just walking around in the world, doing my own thing, I don't even think so much about what's available to me. And then when I actually sit down and talk with somebody, it's like all of my intuition turns on. My intuition turns on basically with other people.
Yeah, and so that's exactly what it is. Yeah, because it's like, I'm a total weirdo music freak, and so otherwise I'm like walking around in the woods singing to myself and talking to the trees, or listening to K-pop and working out or whatever, and or metal. I'm way into like Asian pop and metal right now. Um and that is actually what goes on in the day. It's like, and then if I open up Scrivener in my computer to start working on the book, this whole thing kicks in. But it's like there's two aspects, and there's the we aspect and there's the me aspect. And
I like
I'm a total dork, and they're kind of amazing. So
you get these amazing we allies in certain situations.
they're rad. Yeah, when we're doing it together, it's a totally different thing. I'm pretty ridiculous on my own, so
I love it. Well, okay, you're teasing everybody who's listening right now with some of your story, but before we get there, like, how would you describe your spirituality, your practice, your path? What words would you give for that?
um historically I would have said that I was a magician. Um in more recent years I also used the term witch, but in a somewhat specialized form. For a long time I just went with dirt sorcery, uh with the idea that, which is I I used to hang around with a lot of ceremonial magicians because they were the only people I could talk to. Um, I have not never meshed fully comfortably with a lot of the neo-pagan movement, because I'm not theistic at all. Uh, and I came up with dirt sorcery from people saying, wanted to talk about like Solomonic magic or John Dee's Enochian system or whatever, because that's what they were into. And I would be like, dude, I just like make stuff with rocks and string. Because this is how I worked. I like figured out like I could do this very primitive kind of fetish based sorcery. And so I began calling it dirt sorcery, because it was like, no, it's very present. It's not transcendent. It's not interested in transcendence. It's very much in the body. It's very much in the physical. It's connected to the spirit, but it's not saying that that's the goal, is to get out of the body, get out of this place, because I'm extremely fond of this place.
I'm into that. Yeah, but like when you're saying like I'm just here with rocks and strings, like you're doing that and you're noticing shifts in your reality or shifts in
I
your
basically,
consciousness.
I tried to learn how to do more traditional ceremonial magic. And what I kept coming back to is that if I actually kind of let myself find material rather than run correspondences or anything like that. So if I'd get out into the woods, or I'd shop secondhand shops or hardware stores or wherever, I mean, you can find all sorts of things that I could do this with. I could basically use those material base items to kind of combine into a material base that I could encode with an intention, and create these kind of fetishes or talismans. And that was my primary way of working for a long time.
Am I hearing you say that you would do that without it needing to be like the prime election for Saturn or something, or it needs to be certain materials?
I've never cared.
Okay.
I've never
Totally.
I have there's some lunar patterning that if I have something that's not time sensitive, I'll try and sync up with. But otherwise, no, I don't work with the planets. I don't work with astrology at all. I don't really understand astrology at all. I've never learned Kabbalah. I've never learned a lot of the things that are kind of baseline for Western mystery tradition, kind of
Yeah,
ceremonial
totally.
magic
Like the
approaches.
main stuff that people usually think of, you're not so
Yeah,
interested in personally.
yeah. And so now I would say that I'm an animist first, who works and teaches and kind of does what I do through magic or sorcery or witchcraft. But those are really secondary now to the animist aspect. The animist aspect to me is the more important one. It just happens to be that that's the path that I took that led me to the animism. And it gives me access to people that I can work with either as friends or as colleagues or as teacher who are already kind of primed to a language that I kind of has spent, most of my life immersed in.
Oh, wait, so it's like if your worldview or your practice is like a big circle, like the big circle is animism, and then there's a lot of stuff inside of it.
Right. And so
Okay.
the methods that I would use, that I use generally to teach that are magically are what I consider magic or sorcery based. Um and I think that that's yeah, I would say that. And so for me, kind of definitionally, and this is again, we've talked about this a little bit, I'm not too concerned with how people use language. It's like I kind of get as close as I can and then just use it, and it tends to be as clear as I can about how I'm using it. To me, like animist sorcery is kind of the closest thing to kind of a mongrel not connected to any tradition or uh lineage that is similar to a lot of forms of shamanism. Shamanism exists within context of tribe and family and very specific functions as intermediaries. So I would say that animist sorcery is like kind of the individualist side of that, because I don't have that. I didn't grow up in that.
Oh.
And so I can't say that I function in that way. And also, shamanism is already a tricky word because it's very specific, but it's become very general.
Yeah, but is it kind
Um,
of like a
but
conceptualization that is
it's a
as close as
similar
possible?
worldview. It's a
Yeah.
similar worldview. Uh, so when I look at a lot of surviving indigenous, uh, what I would call magical traditions, though often they would be considered religious traditions, what I see in there is very related to me in a way that like ceremonial magic or a lot of Christian mysticism or even Buddhism
Mm-hmm.
is not. Uh,
Got it.
some aspects of Tibetan Buddhism make more sense to me because of the Bon influence. Is what I believe it is. But yeah, you generally, I began recognizing that pretty early on, reading anthropology, and once I was able to read through the obvious biases of the anthropologists involved, which tended to be really gross. This was in the 70s or 80s and 90s. It's a little less
Mm.
gross now, but not entirely.
Totally, like
Um,
25% less gross, probably.
yeah, it's like a quarter less gross. I would look at that stuff and it made sense. And so
With
that's, I
you.
think, it had always made sense. Like the first time that I found these kind of explanations of these kind of world above, there's the underworld, there's the land of the dead. Didn't really matter what society it came from or what culture it came from.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as those kind of concepts came up, and less so in the European material, but more in stuff that had was closer to the oral traditions, I would say, and closer to the lived experience rather than mythological stuff and anthropological stuff. Those explanations of how the world worked made much more sense to me than anything else.
Right. But you don't necessarily ascribe to those other ways, but you feel like they complement or they sync up well
I
with
think it's
what you
I think
do.
it's I think it's dealing with a similar worldview.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think that the root understanding of how the world works is closer there than anywhere else. Um,
Yeah.
and so it's not something that I spend a lot of time in because I don't like part of the kind of, if we have a mission, me and the peeps, is kind of generating a language for other kind of mongrel Westerners that isn't
I get you.
appropriative. And so I do dive into those spaces a little bit, but I try not to. I don't want to become a specialist in anybody else's culture because I don't want to. I think it's very difficult to do that and not be appropriative.
I get you. Yeah, I really like this word mongrel that you've been saying. I really like that word. Like, does that
I
just
do
feel
too. It
really
took me a
good to
long
you?
time to
Like, that
find
feels
it.
resonant?
It totally does. Like I look at it and I go, like I'm part, Ashkenazi Jew from Hungary. I'm part Scots and Irish and German and all these other things.
Mm-hmm.
And then systematically in the world that I grew up in, part of my family's only been here for say the last 100 years. The other chunk came through with the Pilgrims. Um, like mongrel is the only thing that makes sense to me. It's like I don't view that the United States has a culture. I don't think we've developed one yet. Um, and so it's also kind of it kind of reflects that like no,
Mm.
we're kind of like I feel like very much kin with the junkyard dogs. Like
Mm.
I'm kind of something that just kind of happened, and that's true in my practices as well. Like I learned what I needed to learn to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then
Yeah, where
over
it's like
time,
something that's synthesizing in the debris of like a cultureless place. In so many
right.
words. I don't know. That's just kind
Yeah,
of what I'm
I
hearing you say.
no, absolutely, and I definitely came from punk rock. Punk rock led me to magic, explicitly, and so I also came in with that kind of ethos of like, we're going to get on stage and do it, and we'll figure it out when we're on
Mm.
stage. And that was very much my approach to learning magic as well. Was like,
Oh.
oh, if this is supposed to do something, let's try it. Like,
Right.
I don't need to understand it. I don't care.
Yeah, I don't
Let's
want to
go.
read a book on it. I want to actually
Yeah.
do it.
It's so this is what we were talking before about me being a terrible student because I'm the guy that is like going to pick up the book that is
Mhm.
theoretically going to take you step by step through. And the first practice is going to give me some ideas. And I'm
Hmm.
going to take that as far as I can. Like,
Mhm.
don't even show me the rest and don't tell me your reasoning, was my approach.
Mm.
This is not a suggested approach. It just was appropriate to me.
Yeah, it's good for
Uh,
your temperament.
it's good for my temperament. And I'm also, I would say that I have essentially been completely fearless in my approach to magic. It's not true in all aspects of my life. But there's stuff that you're
Hmm.
like, you don't do that because it's dangerous. And I'm like, well, it's interesting. Yeah,
I'd
it
rather
blew up.
live with the consequences than not do it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, sure, it blew up all sorts of stuff. So that shit blows up anyway.
You're here to experience things.
I am very much here to experience things.
You're here to experience things. Totally. I'm into it.
I'm
I'm
also
into
got a
it.
I also because of the way that like I'm wired, I kind of only learn experientially. Like until I can actually pick it up and do it.
Mm.
I don't gain knowledge from reading. I
Mm-hmm.
get ideas and then I go experiment.
I'm so into that. I'm so into that. I'm sure there's so many takeaways from this conversation today, but I hope that's something that people hear you say. Go do it. Go do it. Yeah, get some ideas and go do it. I think people have so much mental constipation because just given the way we get information now with like social media, short form video, all these sorts of things, like we're mentally constipated with all these things that we're being told to do, but we don't end up doing any of it.
Whereas, yeah, I really think that I consider myself incredibly lucky to have started looking at this stuff in probably kind of related stuff when I was 11 or 12,
Mm.
which would have been in 78, 79. And then getting serious into it in the early 80s, and then going hardcore in the mid 80s. And then it's been continuous. There was so little available.
That's what I was just wondering about.
there was so little information available where I was. I was out in the suburbs of Northern California. The first breathing exercises I took seriously, I found a page from a book on the street that had a breathing exercise that I could not figure out what book it was, but it had a breathing exercise on it. And so I did it. I was like, okay, this has been left in my path. Let's see what this does. And I did that as my only breathing exercise for like 2 years. And it's, again, this is the way that I'm also weird. I don't tend to go, oh, let's go learn about breathing exercise. This leads me into pranayama. I'm like, no, what can I do with this thing?
Oh, I'm so into that.
Like, this is a door.
Yes.
I'm going to walk through that door and I'm going to let it teach me everything that it can.
Totally.
And that's been my root approach.
Totally.
Forever.
I'm literally always yelling at people to just be like, stop thinking that like the tools that you currently have at your disposal are the problem. Like if you were to just like really go deep into what you currently have, so long as you have a few really good tested tools, why don't you just try that for a year? Like I'm just
absolutely. No, I mentioned this, I think, in 6 Ways, my first book, which is, a collection of the things that kind of stood the test of time in my kind of first 30 years of magical practice. And people still come at like, how long should I spend on each of these? And I'm like, what are you doing? It's like, it is clearly not laid out that way. Like, which ones call to you? Like, these are all doors, and the key is to walk through the door.
right.
And I think this is so true, especially for folks who are probably more along the lines that I am, which is, I'm a very kinesthetic learner. I learn by doing. I'm neurodivergent. I do not manage long chains of linear information well. Kind of rote memorization simply doesn't happen. I've tried. I'm aphantasic, so I can't see. I have no inner screen. So a lot of the stuff in a lot of spiritual practices are like, okay, you're going to visualize this pentagram as you draw it, or you're going to visualize this Madonna, or you're going to visualize this Dakini. It's not happening. I tried for 20 years and then gave up and went, everything that I do still is functioning. It works. So maybe that's not as important as it is. And this has just been a case of kind of combination of selection and confirmation bias within all of these systems.
Oh, you mean like you not having the ability to visualize on your inner screen is not like a disadvantage. Maybe there's too much of an emphasis on it. Yeah, it's not stopping you.
It's not stopping me, and it never did. And it was when I finally went, wait a second, you've been doing this very effectively for a very long time. Fucking stop it. And then probably 10 years ago, I learned about aphantasia and went like, there's like 5% of us that functionally cannot visualize at all, is the guesstimate. So that's 1 in 20 people. It doesn't matter how you try to train them. It never happens. And then everybody else is, on the spectrum of things being faint to things being, full-blown hallucinators, what I call them, among my friends, which I have a lot of them.
Yeah, totally. Same.
And a lot of spiritual practices are kind of geared towards the hallucinators. And I don't mean this in a bad way. I'm not saying this is like...
I think you're just saying what's going on.
If you can actually generate, an image of an old school clock with all of its clockworks and the gears moving in different directions. That is something that you innately had the ability to do, that you honed. I can't fucking actually visualize my apartment when I'm not in it. I do something that is similar. I have a sensory, imaginal ability, but it's not visual. And I can translate it into something that is closer to visual, but it's not. If I dig in, that's never happening. And And it makes sense of a lot of things. When I was a kid, I was super into psychedelic drugs, and I was always pissed because all my friends were like hallucinating like wild, and I was not.
Having like eyelid shows, and you're like,
I'm like, I feel great. Things are really weird. I think I can see into another dimension, but that's different.
Yeah, interesting.
You know.
Yeah, well, I'm hearing you kind of speak about yourself as somebody who's been able to just relentlessly work with what you have and not let other expectations kind of get you in the way of you continuing this experiment of experiencing.
Yeah, many years ago, I came across a quote from Henry Rollins where he said that his success had nothing to do with talent. It was all based on him having the tenacity of a cockroach. And I relate to that utterly. Like no, if I want to do it, it's gonna happen.
I get you.
And it may be impossibly hard, but if I want to do it, I'm gonna make it fucking happen. And I am not stoppable by normal means.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, my guru has this kind of tongue-in-cheek, slightly rude saying where he says even a dull spade can build a beautiful garden. And he always says that just to remind people that you don't need to be perfectly physically fit. You don't need to be like an academic genius to do anything on the spiritual path. You just need to use what you've been given to the best of your ability to go as far as you can go. That's it.
Absolutely. And so a lot of what I do and how I view what I do in the kind of public world is I try and offer as many doors as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Not so someone can master all the doors. That's not what that's about. It's like I want to hopefully be the person that's never been able to find the door that fits for them. I want to help as many of those people walk through a door.
Yeah.
And then be there to say, like, you don't need anything else. Yes. You're in. As soon as you're in, all you got to do is keep walking and you keep being interested and keep looking around.
That's music to my ears. I love it. I'm so glad you're doing that.
I mean, that's really the whole focus. I've got other stuff that goes on because I have all these spirit contacts and they had an interest. They're interested in that too. But the main one is just like, no, it's like people will come in, well, I just taught this course and we probably put out 15 or 18 practices or something within the course. And a bunch of people would be like getting frustrated. It's like, this is not doing it for me. I'm like, screw it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that doesn't have to be the thing. I'm giving you a bunch of these and maybe 2 or 3 of them will stick.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have 2 or 3 things that you can work,
mm-hmm.
again, you're golden, and those will guide you to the other things that will work.
Yeah.
And I think if that's in the kind of modern super information overload age, we've mostly lost faith in that, which is like, you don't really need much. Like I could start walking from the West Coast and find Meredith. And I don't need to know the path there right now. I just need to keep walking towards the sun rising.
Oh, totally.
Every day for a really long time. And at some point, I need to figure out where New York is.
Yeah, you have to like get a little bit more precise.
But that's not what I need to start walking.
Oh, that's such a good analogy. That's such a good analogy. There's language in my religious tradition. So I'm a Shakta Tantric tradition, and actually there's a lot of folk magic in my lineage of like the high Himalayas. And so I don't really consider myself a magical practitioner anymore, but there's some of that in my background. But in our tradition, we say that God is either revealed or concealed. And so our awareness, or God, consciousness, spirit awareness is either revealed or concealed in our physical awareness. And so sometimes when I'm teaching people, I'm hearing you speak about these doors. I'm like, what's revealing your awareness of God? Do that. What is revealing your awareness of you, this inner joy inside of you? Keep doing that. Run towards the revealment and have some self-awareness of like, what do you know reliably conceals your awareness? And then just like go from there.
Yeah. And so, one of the things that happened for me is, I was messing around with this stuff on my own. And then I came across chaos magic. And this was in the very early 80s. Kind of proto-chaos magic I came across in the Temple of Psychic Youth in 82 when I was 15. And they had a particular kind of sexual written sigil manifestation methodology. And so I worked with that. And then in 87, which is really the turning point for me where I went kind of full bore into this stuff. So when I was 20, I came across Lieber Nolan's Psychonaut by Peter J. Carroll, which was the first kind of major book that was available in the U.S. on chaos magic. And he taught a method of sigil magic, following on after Austin Osman Spare. And I began doing that. And that was this hugely beneficial thing because it was a really simple practice that had decent success in the real world. Nothing has great success in the material world, I don't think. I think people are looking for the thing that always works every time as expected, and it ain't there.
So real.
But it was great because as I dug into what people thought about sigil magic and what Spare thought about sigil magic, this became like a whole investigation for me. And at some point I remember one day having the realization a few years into working that way, that I was like, okay, what if I just took the sigils as the teacher? What if I took this really simple method as the teacher, and instead of caring what anybody else says about it or how to do it, what if I strictly looked at it and says, what is it telling me about how magic works? What is it telling me about methodology?
Yeah.
If this works periodically, which it did, what does that say about reality? Like, don't go looking for the philosophy. Don't go looking for the theory. What does it do? What does it tell me in this body with what I have right now, with what I already got? What does it suggest magic might be like? And that's really that kind of inquiry has been my guide kind of forever. So for me, what I did was it started with sigils, where I was doing sigils. And at some point I decided that I would just try and let the sigils become the teachers. So instead of trying to study sigil magic and what Spare thought about sigil magic, and he's fucking impenetrable anyway, so it's not a bad thing to skip. I was like, this mostly works, or it works enough to know that it's workable, but what does the practice itself teach me about this kind of magic?
Like the mechanics of it all.
Like, yeah, but what is it telling me? It's like, instead of going to somebody else to tell me, it's like I have a practice. The practice is embodied. I do it. I actually have done this hundreds of times. It's pretty consistently successful in the sense that doesn't work every time, but it works enough that you know it's working. And then I began to really use that same approach with everything else. So if I would come across something like a breathing technique that worked, or a trance induction technique, instead of going, let's go find more of these, which is what I see most people doing now, is they're kind of like, let's get more tools. It's like, no, I want to learn what that tool and I can do together. And then maybe that tool will teach me how to modify it so that I actually kind of, in a weird sense, it's not possessive sense of ownership, but that I actually own the whole process.
I get you. So am I hearing you say that you wanted to experientially understand the full range of what's possible with a tool? By developing a relationship with it and observing it and seeing what it could teach you.
And in a sense going, okay, this is probably also because I think I have always been an animist in some way, though I didn't have that language. I was like, this has to be a living system in some way. And so why can't I learn from the system itself rather than commentaries about the system? why do I need to go to school to learn how to use the hammer and the chisel rather than somebody shows me how to sharpen it and how
And
not
you
to
see
like
what you
injure
see.
myself?
Yeah.
And then you get a big bunch of wood and you go,
Can I
okay.
can I interrupt you with something that's coming up for me with this whole
Yeah.
idea? So, this seems like a very like late stage capitalism overproduction thing that I've observed of like there's all of these products for doing one specific thing. And so people think like I need to have a kitchen full of all of these tools that do they cut the apples like this or the thing does this or the thing does this where as I maybe you relate with this I've always kind of been like if something needs to get done I'll find a tool somewhere in the kitchen and I can figure out how to do the thing with like less tools. Whereas
Yeah.
maybe there's an obsession with like we need to have all these specialized things for doing this specialized thing when in reality you could have like a knife and open up a can or you could cut a tomato or it's like there's all these things you could do.
Absolutely. And we see this a lot in a lot of people that come to magic, and even more so specifically to folks that kind of view it as witchcraft because of the kind of concept of spells, whereas kind of ritual magic tends to have kind of particular protocols for dealing with particular kinds of spirits or something, is this obsession with let's get more spells. Like I need more spells. And then what I saw when I came back into the world of online magic, which was around 2011, was people were like, what god should I work with to get this job or to find a new relationship? And to me, that was always really bizarre because it's like, well, who do you know? Because maybe it's not about this classification system. It's who do you have a relationship with, which is, again, a very animist perspective. You go like, it's kind of that thing, like, I could go and do a bunch of research on you to see whether I think it's cool to sit down and talk with you. Or I can go, wait a second, Meredith already vetted you. I trust Meredith. I don't need to know anything else about you. Yes, I'll go listen to you talk to Meredith because that's super cool. And I get to hear your style, but I'm already in. And so I think that from an animist perspective, in my perspective, and again, I'm not much of a theist, so I don't work with many things that most people would qualify as deity. Like I just ask my allies for help and for guidance, and they consistently provide it.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting, and the analogy that I always use there is it's like when you're moving, you have two approaches. You can hire the movers, which tends to lead to a lot of broken stuff if you've ever done that. Or you can throw a party for your friends or even maybe pay your friends to help you move. And yeah, it might be less efficient in some ways. It's not the perfect thing. They aren't perfect. Maybe you need help with the piano, but who's committed to you? And why wouldn't you work there? And so I'm very into kind of commitment to practice.
Yeah.
In specific, like I know a ton of methods and I teach methods because it's helpful until someone finds the one that works for them.
That's right. That's right.
But practically, I do very much the same thing day in and day out. And I'm not really bound to that because, again, it's kind of like if I'm in the kitchen and I got forks, spoons, knives, and pans, everything else is maybe helpful, but maybe not. Maybe it's just keeps me from being creative.
Yeah, I mean, limitation is the seed of creativity. I literally feel that way.
No, I think that constraints are incredibly useful and limitations are incredibly useful because of that. They get your brain working, and they get, as kind of spiritually based folks, they get a real communication going with however you view that. Not everybody's an animist. Not everybody's going to be considering this from the perspective of having, discarnate helpers. And I don't think that that's the relevant piece here. It's like you can work with what you have. It's not about another technique.
Yeah.
You need a few.
Yeah.
Uh,
Totally. I have a few things. Sometimes when I'm speaking with people, I get words that start rolling around in my head, and one of the words is outsourcing, keeps coming up over and over and over again. And I wonder if like something you've observed is that people are outsourcing from the council that's already there with like, I need another god or
right.
something. Like, does that word outsourcing kind of do
No, I
anything
think
for you?
that's true. I think that's a great way of viewing it. The language that I use a lot is old, is old, but how I often talk about it with spirits is, are you familiar with the term "dance with them that brung you"?
No, I don't think so.
This is I think probably a somewhat hillbilly term, but that I know because it was used in my family, and it was specifically about if you get invited to a dance by someone and you go with them, don't get distracted by all the other people.
Oh.
Dance with the person that brought you.
Oh.
It doesn't have to be exclusive, but and to me, I feel the same way. Like it's like
Mm.
if you accept that you have some kind of spiritual guidance, whether that's a deep mind aspect
Mm.
or God or the gods or spirits,
Mm.
why wouldn't you put your energy there? It's already present. You already have the relationship, and again, animism is extensive. Is explicitly about relationship.
Mm.
And it's not about how do I maximize the number of specialist spirits at all.
Right.
It's realizing that maybe that's not important because
Oh.
doesn't the thing that loves you and cares for you and wants to help you, might that not have already the best idea
Mm.
of what you could do for work or
I see.
the relationship that would work for you
Yeah.
rather than going, ooh, love goddess, I must go and talk to Venus or Aphrodite or whoever to help me find love. It's
Right.
like, do you know that person? Isn't that kind of like using Match.com to find somebody?
Right. Or it's
It's
like I
kind of
almost
like
think about having too many relationships and you can't really go deep with any one of them.
there's that as a big one. Um, especially when it comes into the magic world, there's a lot of books of spirits, and these are the spirits that are worked with, often in what to me are very questionable ways, by a huge number of people. And so you want to go
Mm.
into all of that baggage? You want to go into uh,
Oh.
that? Why wouldn't you again kind of drop into what's in your house and what's riding with you?
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, well, I have some thoughts about this, like, or questions actually for you. Like, do you have any thoughts about like the underlying, possibly unconscious motivation that moves somebody to be collecting all of these new deities or thinking they need all of these new practices? Like, do you have any thoughts about the underlying thing that's going on there?
I think it's I mean, I personally think that it's a mostly unconscious kind of hoarding behavior that comes from the systems that we're in. Uh,
100%.
I totally believe that that's what that is mainly. And this is not, and understand that if this is something that a listener is doing, this is not us attacking it all. It's just something to consider.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we think that more is better. About 20 years ago, this guy, Ryan Hurst, who runs a company specializing in kind of getting people physically moving better called GMB, he said in a seminar that I watched a recording of, he said, people think that more is better and better is better.
Mm-hmm.
And he was really speaking about quality of movement. It's like, you don't
I'm with you.
necessarily need to do everything. You need to do what you already do really well.
Really well.
And then you figure out where the holes are from there. But
Yeah.
if you just go looking, thinking that if you get enough, somehow magically all the holes will be filled,
Mm-hmm.
you may just have more and not be better.
Yeah, totally.
Uh, and so, I also think people are drawn to different things, and I think that that's perfectly fine.
I totally get it. Yeah, but I think it's like something I think I teach a lot about worldview. And so like if I have like a new student, I'll have them investigate like, what's your worldview? Because there's an outcome in our experience of reality based on what we think reality is or how it works.
Absolutely.
And so if you never think about that, you're not going to be able to quote unquote control certain outcomes in your reality or invoke the possibilities for certain things to happen. And so the reason, wait, why did I start talking about this? I started saying this because if somebody is working with like tons of deities or doing all these things and that's actually getting them the outcome that they want, hell yes.
Perfect.
But I think the thing that you're talking about is people are doing that unconsciously and it's not even getting them anywhere close to the outcome that could be happening.
Right.
Because they're not working with it in the highest way. Or not highest, but you're with me? Like,
yeah,
the most efficient way.
It's not efficient. Yeah. And I'm with you on that. A lot of my stuff also directly kind of addresses worldview because I think one of the things that is lost into it's not clear until it's clear, and then it never goes away.
Yeah.
Is our perceptions of how we think things are it's like the heaviest lifter in our entire life, and it will only tend to allow in. It becomes like a filter, and we only see that. And we can get very calcified, and we can see this all over society. There are folks that really cannot see any possible ways out of all sorts of the messes that we are in worldwide, social, society-wide, which is really a worldview issue. And so if we look at, my books and things like that, Weaving Fate very explicitly looks at this and gives methods for actually changing your internal worldview.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last book that I published, Changeling, is like it's a little brutal, but it's like, let's go interrogate that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go play a question game that has a magical component to it to figure out, like, why do you think you can't have that? Why do you think that your desires are not valid? Why do you think that being in your power will cost you more than it gives you? All of these things, and so I think that's a very big piece, because worldview to me comes first.
I'm with you.
I know that the way that I approached magic came because I had so completely, I was so disgusted by the worldviews that I was raised in, that I was looking for different. And so a lot of the stuff that was borderline, I rejected for better or worse. Like if you weren't pretty radical, I didn't have any use for you. 'Cause I was so like, no, what we're doing is insane. And I believed it would lead us to where we are right now. As did a lot of people. That doesn't make me special. And so there was a time when I would have said that, like, kind of magic is inherently and always based on practice. And there's a way that that's true. But that worldview has to be addressed, because you have to be existing in a perceptual state that allows for magic.
It invokes the possibility.
That says, yeah, this is reasonable. I don't know how it works. You don't need to know how it works.
Totally. Oh my God, you don't need to know how it works. That's so real.
You do not need to know how it works. You need to know how to work with it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're looking for, I tell people, I talk about this all the time, but when I came into magic, I was like, this ought to be more like auto mechanics. Like, I ought to be able to get the manual, and this is, in the 70s, early 80s, things were simpler, or 80s, I guess it would have been for me. But by the time I got to this thought, I was like, I ought to be able to get like the big repair manual that I had for like my 77 Chevy, which tells me this is how you take apart everything and put it back together and make it work. But that was a complete misunderstanding of the spiritual. I do not believe that the spiritual world works like that. It's not a mirror of the material, which is how I think a lot of us want it to be. And so we look for material solutions to spiritual issues, and we try and frame spiritual issues as if they were material issues, and they're not.
Okay, so the words that are coming to my head now are like linear. And so, like, the physical thing of a manual that can give you a step-by-step thing is relevant to a linear timeline of fixing a truck.
Yes.
But what I think I'm hearing you say is that the spiritual world doesn't function even within linearity. So thinking that there are clear steps that are replicable 100% of the time is just it's not even on the game board.
It's not on the board at all.
Yeah.
And it's also, again, it's when we look at, again, I came from a ceremonial magic background, where there's a massive emphasis on visualization, just as the example. This presupposes the ability to visualize. It presupposes that it's trainable.
Mm-hmm.
And this tends to then lead to finding yourself lacking in some way that you cannot fix. If you are aphantasic, for example, I did pretty good because it's like I kept playing with it, but I didn't let it really become an issue. I kept doing what worked. A lot of people tear themselves up over this. They're like, no, I've been trying for 25 years really hard to gain this skill. And it's like, what if that skill's not available to you? How would you then proceed? I want to go there as quickly as possible because I believe that that thing might open up for you if you walk away from it. But if you believe that that's the key and don't understand that this was worldview of the person who wrote this and developed it, which then through confirmation bias and selection bias, they gathered people around them who could also do this thing. And so they all believe it's trainable. They all believe it's innate in everybody because that's the only people who survived the process. Everybody else was just like, fuck it, I'm going to go back to the farm. And they left the monastery.
Oh, yeah. So it's just almost kind of like a mechanistic view.
It's a mechanistic view that believes that we're all the same.
That's right.
And this is just kind of absurd to me. And so I would say that, like, kind of as my view of what I'm talking about with spirituality, which does involve things that I consider like aspects of the soul and things like that, that I don't have clear definitions for, but I don't find that that's a thing that really matters to me, but that engages with discarnate forces and discarnate spirits and the spirits of the dead, and kind of consciousnesses that are functionally very alien, not in the sense of space aliens necessarily, but they seem to also have very long histories with us. They don't operate by material rules. They don't operate in the material world. So it's very interesting because they will also sometimes suggest things as pathways that aren't great for us. Like that was one of the great exposures there.
Great for us from our relative knowledge.
From the body we're in. Like there's things that some of my allies in the past have suggested that you have to go, oh, you've never had a body, have you? And they're like, oh. Like you just can't do that thing. Like, no, I can't just do that thing. And they're like, okay, yeah, we forget sometimes. You know, or there's things that happen because I do a lot of my work in what I call the other world, which is the experiences that are very consistent over time in deep trance states, that happen, that I experience as if they're physical, but they're like super fucking clear. They're like, no. You have to translate this to that because you're so in your body. and that's your whole experience of things while you're incarnate. But to think that we are, for example, male or female or humanoid, that's happening for you to translate what's going on into language that you can understand. I've had experiences that were intensely sexual with them, were so intensely sexual that I've actually like become a little flustered in my trance with like, is this okay? And they're kind of amused by it. They're like, you don't have a way to understand this much sensory input other than pleasure or pain.
Oh, I'm with you.
And
Like
so
your
since
frame
it's
of
not
reference
painful,
is seeing it in a certain
you're
way.
experiencing it as sexual.
Whoa.
But it has nothing to do with that. We don't have that.
Whoa.
But yeah, and so I think, again, coming from this particular way that I interface with the world, and I do consider that the world, it's another aspect of the world. You learn to go like, yeah, this isn't like that. The materialist mindset doesn't work very well with the spirit world. And the more open we can be to go like, okay, that seems like a good thing to you, but I think it might be really bad to me, and taking the agency there and then seeing what comes of it. Because sometimes they will go, oh yeah, that's true. Or, oh, I've worked with a couple of things that like you have to kind of go like, you do get that part of me doing this is that I have to remain functional enough to
like drive to the grocery store
and stuff. And they're like, oh, weird.
Oh, that's so
funny. Is how I've translated. And this is all translation, right? Because they're not speaking to me. They don't have mouths. I'm not hearing them against my eardrums. This is information, consciousness transmission. But yeah, I've had numerous occasions where they're like, oh yeah, like we can't just like wreck you for 3 months. It's like, no, I won't have a place to live. Like, oh, okay.
And then you have to explain why not having a place to live is another problem.
Right. And it's super interesting, but and it's also funny. It's like looking at that stuff again, kind of from my framework. Then if you deal with like the ancestors who are kind of the people that we are descended from genetically, they get all of it. But they can also be totally problematical because they're like, dude, you have food and shelter. You want what? Like, what are you even talking about? You're having some crazy mind game going on that is completely unrelated to anything because they're so grounded in that physical experience that they had sometimes. But
but they're also in contact with the non-physical experience.
But it depends on who you're talking to. Like, there's some folks in my lineage that are like, no, like, the only problem that you have is that you don't have enough livestock. Like, why are you not raising fucking cattle?
Are they being literal, or is there a metaphor with that?
I have some of the closer in ones that I've had contact with are pretty literal about it because they've not moved on far enough. When they get far enough back, they kind of, it depends how stuck they are, to me, is how I think of it. Some are very, very stuck. Like some are super like, I had to like create a kind of method of convincing a number of my ancestral spirits to stay out of my life because they're very not cool with my sexuality, and they're very not cool with the fact that I converse with spirits. They don't perceive themselves as that. And so there are interference, and this is pretty common among people that have that work with the ancestors as it relates to other people. I've had this experience. a lot of your like close in ancestors can be generating issues for you if you are, say, queer,
because of
or
their attachments to how things should be
how
based off
things
of the
should be.
past
So
and their
they're like,
opinion.
whoa, you like boys or you like girls.
Oh.
That's not cool. Get to church.
Right,
Fix
and then
that
you might
shit.
listen to them, and then you've gotten further away from the truth
You've
of who
gotten
you are.
further away from who you are.
Yeah.
And so it's very, it's I would not say that this approach is easy.
Hmm.
It's way easier for me than trying to not do it,
Well,
because
so a
that's
sense that I'm
crazy
getting
making.
from you is that it's like you have this profound openness to experience and openness to experimentation. And maybe this is where you are now and you've had to really figure this out for yourself, but it sounds like you're still very grounded in like respect for your autonomy or something as you're still interacting with these spirits.
Yeah, I no. That's kind of the baseline rule. I view that all beings essentially are sovereign and agentic,
Totally.
and that's not something that we believe we can give that up, and so we try to, and it doesn't work. Um, and so the more kind of anchored in that we can be, the better these experiences go, because something then says, it's very common for some spirits to like want particular things that are like not available. It's like you go like they're like, oh yeah, what you need to feed me is this. These are the offerings that I want. And you go like, I'm not buying you
Oh.
$150 worth of whatever because that's what you want.
Right.
Because that's maybe what you were given in a different interaction with someone.
Oh.
I don't
Or
have
during a different time period where it's like harder to get that
different
thing now or
time periods.
something.
I don't drink. So about 10 years ago, I finally went, this is stupid. I'm not offering alcohol to y'all anymore. And there was issues. They were not it. Some of the things that I worked with were like, no. Well, that's on the table. And I'm like, well, then we're not.
Yeah, like
doing
this is the
this.
deal we have. But then you had to negotiate with them.
And then you basically go, well, that's not happening. And if you need to move on to somebody that will do that with you, that's fine, but it's not happening.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. I've worked with spirits that smoked. And I also stopped that 20 years ago.
I see.
And they're like, yeah, no, we want you to like burn cigars or cigarettes in the house for us. And it's like, no, it's not happening. I'm not gonna put myself in that space. I don't like that stuff. And then also some things will be like, I mean, I've had some fun. It can be really funny. Like one of the first incredibly clear experiences I had with the dead was with Austin Osman Spare, who's kind of the guy who created modern sigil magic. And it occurred to me in my late 20s, I was like, I wonder if I could actually contact Spare as like a ancestral power. If he was right there. It was the fastest thing ever. It was just like, he's there. It's like, I like put up one of his picture, one of his illustrations, and
Whoa.
created a sigil to conjure him. And he was like in my body, because I can't see these things, so usually I will let them into my body to some degree. And he was like in my body and was like, okay, we're in a body. Where's the sex? So this is a famously horny guy. And I was so amused that I'm like, seriously, that's what matters. And he's like, oh yeah, that's what matters. Like, I have access to the body. We need to have sex. And I was like, okay, I know someone who knows who you are and who's a practitioner who might be interested. And so I reached out to them, and they were like, oh yeah, that's insane. We'll totally do it with you and Mr. Spare, and see how that was. And I like walked in, and they're like, whoa, I thought you were joking.
Oh,
But that thing,
it's like tangible.
They were like, that is 100% tangible. And so, we had a very good weekend. And this is hilarious because a number of people have had this experience with him. I had never heard about this with anybody else. Nobody else I'd known tried it. Uh, at one point, somebody sent me a collection of soil from his grave, which is a way that you can contact the dead in folk magic. And like, I opened up that package, and it was like, oh, it's the horny goat dude. Like, welcome and fuck, dude. It was hilarious. But yeah, I now know several people that have had this experience independently of like, yeah, no, if you like let Spare in, Spare is like, let's go. I am ready.
Whoa.
Always. And you go, this is really interesting. You've been dead since I think 75. If that spirit is like, let's do it. This will possibly fall away in time.
Yeah.
And but it was a great example of that, of like, wow, his interests are like his interests still.
Oh, totally.
And that seems to last for quite a while. Some people seem to move on immediately. There are folks in my immediate family who are, immediate familial dead who are very sweet, that were not when they were alive.
I heard that.
But there are a bunch of them that are just fucking assholes. And I do not
Yeah,
deal
because
with
you never know what somebody's fettered by in their body.
Right.
And then they become unfettered and it's like their personality shifts and they might not even feel horrible about the things that they did for once because they're not fettered by the burden of how their body felt. Maybe that caused a lot of problems for them and you have no idea.
Right. And it's also interesting. I work with a group of spirits that it taught me to do kind of psychopomp work, helping spirits cross over that are stuck. And my experience of that is very similar, that they're stuck because they just can't, they like literally can't conceive of not being in the body.
Yeah.
And so they're like kept very, very close to here in a way that's not really correct for us when we cross over. And so they taught me some methodologies for helping them along. And it was generally, it's like almost like sitting with these spirits in the other world and going like, hey, you don't know it, but you're dead.
Oh, that's so interesting.
And they would be like,
wait, what?
Like rebelling against this. And because I have such a relationship with what I call the sisters over there that do this work, I could kind of open the perception of that to them, and they would just like relax and fade.
Oh shit.
And it was like, it's like they couldn't grasp, like, and it makes sense that not everyone is aware that our consciousness and our body are not, and our soul are not just one little tight little knot. And so when that knot starts to unravel, they panic.
Yeah. Well, you're actually answering a question that was rolling around in my head like crazy for the last like 15 minutes. Like this whole idea of somebody being stuck between realms, so to speak, or like a spirit that isn't fully still attached to the body. And I think the thing I'm wondering about is like, are there any like beneficial kind of like dispositions that would help somebody to not get stuck that they could live in their lifetime? Or is that even something you can control? I don't know.
I think it is. I think that first, like a bit, and this is again, this will be viewed as stepping on toes by some people, but probably not within your listenership. Really like interrogating if you have a sense of heaven and hell as what happens after you die. Really interrogating that and seeing if that is something that is a reasonable belief for you to hold, because that is, I think, the main one.
That keeps people stuck?
Yeah, because they're terrified. Where am I going?
So they want to stay in the body because that means that they're not going to hell.
They're not going to hell.
That's wild.
I've encountered that one. And I think really looking at, and this is where I would directly send people into indigenous beliefs about death, and historical beliefs about death outside of kind of modern Western culture. The sisters early on when I connected with them, and they first showed me how to do this thing, I was communicating with them afterwards, and they said, you humans have this very deep confusion because you don't remember death. But your life is a tiny thing in what you experience kind of as a spirit or as a soul, however, whatever language you want to use, that just comes and goes. And if you don't have some conception of that, it helps. If we look at even some of the European views of afterlife stuff, a lot of those were like paradise. Like you died and went to these amazing places where it was like spring all the time and abundance was everywhere, and you got to be with your people again. And I think taking those on as more likely than cosmic punishment for your ills is very helpful. Like even if we look at
wait, let me pause you for a sec. So you're saying like if you happen to sink into the worldview that after I die, the only thing that's going to happen is a good thing.
Yeah.
That would entice you to want to let go of the body.
You let go. Yeah. You don't have to rush it. But, and so I think if we look at a lot of these different mythologies about what happens in the afterlife, some of them are kind of terrifying, but usually that's not the case. Usually it's like, what's the line from that old spiritual that gets, there's a lot of country versions of Wayfaring Stranger. It says, I'm going there to meet my mother. She said she'd meet me when I come. Like, I think that's a really beautiful view if we remove the kind of, this is just the heaven side of it. And if you're a bad person, you're going to hell.
Yeah.
But realizing that all of this passes, to me, the persistence of the dead is a very real thing, which helps. And that's very common, again, in kind of pre-modern views. Not that far back in the West, even. Dreams of the dead were viewed as actual visitations all over Europe. They still are in many places.
Yeah.
And so if there's this continuity anyway, I think that eases that fear up, or it can.
Yeah, I like taking a view that, let's just use like your present incarnation as this thing that's ephemeral, that will just come and go. And this is just like from my point of view, it's like every lifetime is just like a new wave of consciousness having new experiences, and then it has like another wave of experiences, and it's just all this need to experience new things. That's like the point of reality from my point of view. It's just having more and more experiences. But these experiences are unrelenting and unceasing and constant. And whatever experience I'm having in this lifetime is not permanent or fixed.
Right.
I'm going to have more experiences, or I've already had 10,000 experiences. There's no reason to cling to it so desperately.
Right. And one of the ways, I talk about it when I talk about kind of teaching about old line ancestors, which are the ones that are way beyond our kind of available memory. One of the ways that I talk about it is we're so removed from the cycles of life, most of us in the West, that we don't understand that, like, we are the dead walking physically. Like, we are both, and this is on a genetic standpoint, but it's also on our minerals are recycled. Our cellular structure is recycled.
Oh, that's right.
All of it. So where do we really go, even physically? Like, we change.
Yes.
But we're all the output of things that didn't even have legs. Like, those are our ancestors.
Oh my God, totally.
The fish trying to figure out how to grow legs in the shallows. That's your ancestor.
Totally.
And so you wouldn't be here without
Yeah.
a gazillion generations
Yeah.
of this churn of life and
Yeah,
death.
totally.
And so it's very odd to be afraid of, I think it's very reasonable to be afraid of the pain that often goes with and the debilitation that often comes preceding death. But to me, death is the most natural thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've lost sight of that.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, it's nothing to rush. Uh, but it's not like it's bad.
No, and also I just think that like even you were speaking about Buddhist point of views earlier in the conversation, and maybe this is persistent in a lot of different traditions, but just awareness of the imminence of death or that death is always with us can bring a quality of wakefulness and presence to your life. And I can't help but wonder if our death phobic culture, just speaking as Americans living in the United States, it's like that fear of death brings us out of presence with our life.
Right. Yeah. And I think, that's a great point. I think, Thich Nhat Hanh has a really lovely book, Fear, where he really talks about how sad he was when his mother passed. But then, based on his understanding of the world, he was like, but she's still here because she's
Mm-hmm.
here in my mind. She's here in my heart. She's
Mm-hmm.
still part of the world in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So, is she not present in the rain? Is she not present in the forest? Is she not present in me?
Mm-hmm.
And can we
Mm-hmm.
kind of shake that terror of either these very odd views, which is the kind of hell
Mm-hmm.
or utter oblivion? Uh,
Yeah.
and to me, I look at it and go like, humans have never thought those things. Those are very new things.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, those are new ideas. We've
New
always,
ideas.
these are very new ideas. And like, your dog doesn't think about this, and you're not really different than your dog. uh, you know,
Yeah.
we like to think we're a lot different, and I don't think we are.
Yeah.
Um, we are different, but not in the ways that matter, maybe.
Oh, totally. Or we put too much of an emphasis on the ways that we're perceivably different from our dog.
And I think we also, because we shut off the presence of the dead in a way that a lot of cultures haven't. Uh, and again, fairly recently. So now we have like, I think, mixed up our sense of losing people when they die
Um,
with a sense of loss when we die that wasn't necessarily present before.
mhm.
Uh, there's a lot of I do think it's really worth looking at kind of like, yeah, world views about what happens.
Well, I wonder if part of it is just like somebody with an unexamined attachment to materialism. Because if something's dead, it's gone. Whereas if we're speaking more in the realm of like, there's no superiority between the physical and the non-physical. It's the same game.
Right. Well,
I don't know. That's just my thought.
no, I totally agree. It's like I often say that like you can't, when we're alive, we can't separate. When we're incarnate, which like literally means in the meat, um, we can't separate the spiritual from the physical because we perceive everything through the physical body that we're in. Um, but I just I have no sense that that's all that I am. There's no nothing
Yes,
in my
totally.
experience holds
Totally.
that. Uh,
Totally.
and so yeah, there's transition that occurs and some things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but what exactly those are, it's probably variable. Uh, I do feel really blessed to have had the relationship that I've had with the sisters because they've completely. I didn't have a lot of fear of death before that, but after that, I was like, okay, I trust them, and they're like, it's all good. It's like, okay,
Nice.
I'll go with that.
Nice. Nice. Well, oh my gosh. Do you realize it's already been 2 hours
It
since we
seemed
first
like
got on
it was
here?
probably getting there. But it's
Oh
lovely
my
talking to you.
gosh. It's been really great talking with you. I could probably stay a little bit longer than what I said in the very beginning, just so we can like properly wrap this up.
Yeah.
But I actually have a personal. Would you mind if I asked you a question about something from my own life?
Oh,
And then you could
absolutely.
maybe help me see it in a different way.
Absolutely.
So I would say back in 2018, 17, maybe. I've been in my tantric lineage since 2015, so this was like a couple of years into being in my lineage. I had a bunch of night visits from different saints in my lineage. And so there was one experience where this being of blue moving light woke me up in the middle of the night. And I was like super fucking freaked out. And then also I had an experience where I'm pretty sure Dhyan Yogi Madhusudandas, who's one of the gurus in my lineage, was like climbing up the walls of my bedroom. And I saw that in the night. But back then, this is before I did a lot of trauma work, a lot of self-investigation into how my body responds to things. I have a lot of bedroom trauma from childhood. And so being woken up in the middle of the night is highly activating for me and unwelcome.
I have that.
Yeah, unwelcome. And so when I had these experiences that I ultimately see now as blessings, I was being blessed by these beings. They were visiting me and there was something going on there. I remember I was speaking with somebody from a Sufi lineage and I was telling them about this and they gave me a practice so that it would stop happening. And then I did the practice and it stopped happening. But years have gone by and I've been like, I kind of wish I hadn't done that.
Mm-hmm.
Because now I'm kind of like, I feel like I shut myself off from something, but it makes sense because my body was like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Are you with me?
Yep.
And so just me telling you that story, like, what do you think of it? Or like, what suggestions would you give to me if I wanted to like open myself to that?
Yeah. So, like the way that I really got into magic, if we break it down to the most real, is when I was 11, I had this terrifying visit in a dream from an entity that was so intense that the only way that I think I could experience it was as terror, but I don't think it was not malevolent. It was an initiation. It was this thing showed up and was like, wakey wake. like, like, you're 11. That's fucking old enough. Let's go. And that's when my life changed and I began moving towards magic. So I've had a similar thing. To me, I'm super simple in how I would approach this stuff, and especially since you know who one of them was, is I would actually set up a small shrine space to them, and make offerings that are appropriate within your lineage. If you don't know, water is the water and light and flowers are usually great. Incense if you use
that's
that.
what I already do.
And just say, hey, this thing happened a long time ago, and I flipped out because I didn't have the capacity to process what occurred, and I did this other practice to try and shut it off. And I wish that I hadn't done that because I would love that your presence here. And so this is me officially inviting you in and formally inviting you in and saying you're absolutely welcome. And I would start with that one because you know what it is, and see how that feels. And in my experience, when we shut these things off, they come in one of two ways, which is they come in like immediate, or they take quite a while.
Yeah.
And so either is fine. And it will probably come in different. Yeah. Because you're in a very different place. But that's the approach that I would use. It's essentially the kind of template for that kind of thing that I know that works.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so I'm hearing you say like almost just like be open and honest about what happened and just say I'm ready to
I'm
experience this
super
in
into
any way.
with stuff that's close in with us. Like for me, the allies or the peeps or the sisters or whoever, or you with someone that's within your lineage like that. I'm like, yeah, it's like I'm like, my suggestion is like, yeah, you like get totally honest and you like basically break out the rib spreaders and go like, here is my heart, here is my guts, here is
Yeah.
me in my most exposed and vulnerable space.
Yeah.
This is not a suggestion for spirits that are outside of these categories for anybody listening.
Totally.
And just go, hey, did that thing, wish I hadn't. Can I now do the next form of this if it's available?
Yeah, can we now do the next form of this? Because I'm also thinking about this, and it's like, I also don't really, like, I've come a long way with my bedroom trauma, but there's like a part of me that's like, what if it wasn't in the middle of the night? But is that
I
like,
do
is
this.
there
No,
something to that? Is there something to that?
well, but the thing that it might be is realizing that you might that's a very common time for me to have access to my spirits. So I tend to do all of my trance work in the middle of the night because it works better. So I do a lot of work between 3 and 5 in the morning, in bed. And so that's a possibility that's like when it's accessible.
I
But
see.
you could ask and say, hey, if that's when you want to do this, I want to be awake first rather than wake up to it. And that also,
Oh, totally. I'd rather be awake first. Yeah.
yeah, and go, here, I have some,
Yeah, because I'm just like not going to be receptive.
yeah, I have this, like, I've got some form of PTSD. If you wake me up from a deep sleep, I fucking lose my shit. Um, it's not a good idea. And it's not fun for anybody. But and yeah, and see what happens. And given if that's I would try it 2 different ways. You could start trying by what happens if you make the offering to the shrine in the morning and then making some space during the day to see if that comes through. And if that doesn't work, then try doing it in the evening, going like, wake me up first. Like, get my attention first before you show up. And then if you are someone who does not sleep all the way through the night, as I am, then you could actually consciously go in there, just lie back down in bed and go, hey, if you want to chat, this is a great time.
Yeah. Like text them like, I'm up, are you?
I'm up, are you? And so my peeps do this with me. It's like if I'm awake and I'm just trying to go back to sleep, they leave me alone. But if I'm like awake and I'm like, hey, do you guys want to talk? I start, because our communication method is very physical. I get kind of shakes and spasms that give me information.
Yeah.
And so if they're into it, I'll start jerking a little bit. I'm like, okay, let's go. And then we'll spend an hour doing that or whatever. So
totally. Yeah, I'm also remembering like during this time period when I was having these experiences, it was an extremely stressful time in my life. And in order to not lose my mind, I would swim laps like to get the energy out. Like it was like, and also the chlorine is like very relaxing. Like people don't talk about how relaxing chlorine can be. Anyway, and so I would have experiences where Dion Yogi would be at the bottom of the pool. And so I want to talk to him and maybe be like, what if we met other places too? Like,
absolutely,
I'll meet you at the pool.
So because I get like these shakes and these spasms, I had to like have, again, this is things that don't have bodies. And so they're like using my structure to communicate because I can't see them. And it had been going on for a while. And just this last year, we got into a really heavy pattern of it. And I was like, one night I was like, oh, I could probably talk to them about how intense this is. And I was like, can we tone down the intensity here?
Yeah.
Because
totally.
I'm waking up like fucking sore, like my fucking shoulders hurt because it goes through my shoulders. And they were like, oh, sure.
Yeah, sorry, we forgot that you have a nervous system.
Exactly. Forgot that you've got like tendons and ligaments in there and shit. We're just trying to like send you little pulses of energy, and that's where it hits. But yeah, that all seems super accessible.
Yeah, awesome. I love that. That makes me feel grounded and open to the idea. Thank you. Thank you. Well, Aidan, before we go, like when you were speaking today or just about all this stuff, like did you like learn anything new about yourself or like did anything come up that you weren't expecting?
Um, a lot of the language around kind of the teaching was somewhat new, which was very cool. This is one of my great pleasures of talking to people that I haven't talked to. Is it generates new language, and so I'll be really interested to dive into some of that because I'm always looking to see. So I look forward to when this comes out because I will listen to it and then take some notes and follow up on
Awesome.
some of those things.
Oh yeah, totally. Like refining the way that you're communicating all of these ideas.
It's more just like, okay, that's a new kind of metaphor or a new
Oh,
view that could be useful in other places. So is that something we want to bring into the work at hand?
I love
Uh,
that.
is that's kind of it's kind of constantly happening for me is somebody gives me new pops something that goes, ooh, I said that differently. What do you think
Totally.
about that? Is that better or is that just for the moment or is it just good to
Totally.
have in the background?
Totally. I love that. I love that. Well, for me, this conversation was a really powerful reminder of what is fully at my disposal and maybe some parts of my own inner life that I just haven't been mm, courting as much as I could. Just like my own inner counsel, my own ancestor stuff. Several years ago, I was doing more of that. And then I kind of like swung super back hard to just, I'm just going to do my lineage, not for any bad reason, but I was just like, I just want to do one thing really well, kind of like we were
Yep.
talking about. But this is a really good reminder of like opening myself up to all of my inner resources and maybe turning back to some of this stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
And it's also just good to remember that we don't have to do everything at the same level. So
totally.
I do a lot of work at a very, very light level, and then I've got a particular thread that I'm running very hard all the time, you know.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Well, before we go, what's your favorite way for people to contact you or find more about you?
I'm mostly active on Patreon at this point. I'm present. I'm the most present on Blue Sky,
Okay, nice.
but I'm currently still on Meta at the moment on Instagram and Threads. But that's really it. Patreon's where the vast majority of kind of my bandwidth resources go. So,
Nice.
uh,
And when you're on Patreon, are you mostly just giving talks or doing live streams or do
oh,
you work
okay.
with
So
people one on one? Like what's
no, I don't do one-on-one work. What the Patreon is now probably 150 videos, a lot of Q&A or things that have come up and other conversations in other spaces that it makes more sense to talk about it there. Uh, and so a lot of Q&A on magic, on animism, on ancestral work, on and then kind of specifics as it relates to practices in my 3 books. And then there's also a really active and really sweet, very neurodivergent and queer-friendly Discord server that comes along with that, where we do a lot more of that work. And then periodically, or pretty much the intention generally is to have a live Zoom every 2 weeks, which is usually about an hour and a half of Q&A, space for people to chat about what's going on in their lives or in the world. And then usually ends with half hour or 45 minutes of kind of guided energy and active imagination and
oh, cool. Nice. So you lead a
often
practice for whoever's there.
and those are all a little bit seat of the pants. I never know what we're going to do. I let the
I think
group
that's
and the
great.
peeps guide that.
I think that's great.
Yeah, so there's a lot there, and then I am teaching a little bit now. So
And you have your books. You didn't say anything about that.
yeah, I have 3 books. The first book is called 6 Ways, and that's kind of the introductory book to magic for a lot of people that is being amazingly recommended by lots of folks. And that's kind of the basic practices that really worked for me as I was kind of coming up as a collection that begins to share some of my worldview stuff. Weaving Fate, which is a combination of 3 practices one of which is kind of a manifestation practice using a journaling tool, a method of doing some trauma remediation for our pasts, and a method of then, it can be that, but it can also go much further, of basically kind of translating ourselves into different moments of time to be supportive to our previous selves, or gain information from our future selves. Cool. That's the book that I'm the most proud of, I would say.
Love it.
And that it actually seems to have been working very well for a lot of people for a number of years now. And then Changeling is a little bit of I warn people, it's a bit of a rough ride if you go into it. Using witchcraft as a conceptual vessel for a bunch of practices to basically figure out what might be your belief structures about yourself and the world that might be in your way.
Oh, so it might be a little confronting.
It can get a little rough if you like fully go into it. I think this is good, but it's not. It's not. Some rides are not by nature gentle. And this one's intention is
biking.
It's like, let's do the thing, like for real. And so for the people that have gone in there, people have. One of the comments is like, this can get really confronting pretty fast in there if you really play with it. Most people, of course, don't, because that's not how most people use books. But if you do decide to play, it's been very useful for a lot of us.
I'm with you. That's my kind of book, so maybe I'll check that one out.
It's fun. It's the book that I wrote before my own blow up and breakdown, and I credit it for it, which was, retrospectively the best thing that could have possibly happened for me. So, but was it a rough ride? Oh yeah, it was a rough ride.
I know. Well, we've got to wrap up here, but we didn't really get the full story from you today. And so if you ever feel like that's inspiring to like us go through your whole story, I'd love to have you back. And maybe
I would love to do that. That would be an absolute pleasure.
Get more information out of you. Yeah. Okay, cool. So
absolute
that would be really cool, because I want to hear more about this breakdown, or like what happened when you were 11. Like, I'm just so curious. I love a good story.
Oh yeah, no, I'd love to do that for you.
Wonderful. Okay, great. Cool. So it was so lovely meeting with you today, and I guess we'll see you again another time.
This sounds good, Hanna.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Take care.
All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. If you want to connect with Aidan, of course, join his Patreon, follow him on Blue Sky, wherever you want to interact with him on the internet. I hope you really enjoy learning with him. And if you enjoyed this episode, could you do a girl a favor and share it with a friend? Like, that is literally the freest way to support me. If you want more of this podcast, more of these interviews, share it with a friend. That is literally the best thing you can do for me. And also give me 5 stars, okay? Just give me 5 stars on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, whatever. And if you enjoyed this episode, you can also see, what I'm all about at my website, hannawilliams.com. That's HANNA Williams.com. My dad bought me that domain name in 1997. Or you can catch me on Instagram at grace.pilled. And if you feel inspired to dive deeper into my spiritual worldview, work with me one-on-one, learn from me directly, be sure to check out my Patreon, which is my massive library of talks and courses that I've given over the years. We'll see you next time.